Okay. Well, thank you so much, Bryony, for being here. As I mentioned at the start of the town hall, Bryony has been a user for a very, very long time now when it comes to sessions. So I think we're going on 8 months. I was trying to look back and see, but it's been quite a journey. You've been with us since the very beginning.
I didn't even know it was that long, but yeah, it's been ongoing for a while, but data.
Yeah, you've been with us. So we appreciate you, and we appreciate you coming today. So why don't you just take a minute to tell us a little bit about Sentisum and about your role there?
Sure. So hi, I'm Bryony. I'm the community manager at Sentisum. If you haven't heard of Sentisum, it's a customer support analytics, routing and reporting platform. So we use AI to tag your customer support conversations, and that way your teams can monitor things like your customer sentiment and plan your product roadmaps based on your customer issues. I will pop a little link to Sentisum in the comments if anyone's curious. But Hopin actually a customer of ours, which is what brought me happily to learn about Session in the first place. But my role as community manager includes things like running our podcasts, which I use Session for, and we'll touch on that, and just being generally active in the customer support community. So if you're a customer support leader, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or reach out to me.
Yeah, and also go attend Sentisum's webinars. You have them fairly often. Is it once a month or a couple times a month?
My boss would like it to be once a month.
Okay, well, we'll work our way up. We'll work our way up there. Okay, great. So why don't you tell us a little bit then about how you're currently using Session? You touched on podcasts, but give us kind of the full picture.
So we use it for podcasts and webinars at the moment. So a bit of context on how exactly I use Session for a podcast is I'll have a meeting with my guests like you would any other normal meeting, and use that recording to produce the episode and then use that on YouTube and Spotify and on the website. It's just much nicer on here because you're sort of side by side rather than on other platforms.
Yep. Awesome. And then before you guys started using Session, what was your video content, community engagement strategy?
So I actually used to use Google Meet to film our podcasts, and I was doing those once a week or once every 2 weeks. And we hadn't actually held any webinars before I joined, but in previous companies, webinars were quite a standard thing, and we'd use things like Zoom and GoToWebinar. I can see someone asking what Google Meet is. It's just Google and meeting platform.
Yeah. I think Zakir's just being a little cheeky.
Oh, here. I didn't see it was that.
Yeah, webinars are net new for Sentisum, but they're not net new for you. You've been running them for some time at other organizations. So tell me a little bit, when you think about the Zoom and GoToWebinar experience in your prior jobs, what were some of the challenges or obstacles that you faced using those products?
Well, I don't know if anyone in the audience has actually used GoToWebinar, so apologies if you do like it, but it's just very, very clunky, and Zoom isn't much better. There's just nowhere near as much customization as there is in newer tools like Session. And if you're a company who's trying to position yourself as current and modern, then it kind of gives off the complete opposite energy if you're then bringing an audience in to a tool that is just boring.
Yeah.
To be blunt. And from a data perspective, the insights that you get from those sort of platforms on your audience, they're very surface level because there's not much opportunity for engagement.
Right.
So report on it.
So then I guess as you were thinking about, okay, I'm going to tackle webinars again, how are you feeling about that? Were you like, okay, I have a different list of requirements this time around for the product that you wanted to use?
So yeah, I knew that because we'd never done webinars before at Sentisum, we needed to think about, okay, how are we actually going to know whether or not what we're going to do is working? So following all of the happenings in 2020, everyone was having to do virtual meetings, and webinar fatigue was this really real thing. And I myself have a lot of struggles when it comes to paying attention to things like webinars, the e-learnings. I just
know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So if I'm going to be presenting them, then I need to make sure that I'm promoting something that I would actually engage with.
Totally.
So we're a startup in the tech space. We're modern, we're friendly, and we like simple interfaces that are pleasant to use. So we want something that promotes engagement, and that people actually enjoy and that we can customize. So we'd never done them before. So being able to gather that data on are we any good at this? Do people like it? Then that's what we really needed. And as we already used Session for podcasts in its beta form, I already knew it could handle all that. So it was a really easy decision.
So tell me a little bit about, you had these kind of requirements around engagement, analytics, a friendly interface, not clunky, to your point about some of the existing products that are out there. How has Session delivered on that experience so far? You've touched on a few of those things already.
Well, on the engagement side of things, the reaction buttons, they obviously allow the audience to engage with the host and the content, just a little click of the button, so you can get that instant feedback on what the audience is enjoying. And they tend to enjoy using the reactions. I think they're quite energizing. They're quite fun for everyone.
They are. Yeah.
That's great from like usability, but then from a data perspective, you get a breakdown after the webinar of who's used the emojis, like what's gathered the most response from the things you've been talking about, who were your most engaged attendees, how did that differ for different people, and just all those important bits that you want to dig into as well, like how long people stayed for and what questions and comments you got there as standard. But other than that, I think the customization is really nice. So you can add your own branding, you can add your own colors, and in each podcast episode I film, I tailor the background to the audience in some way. So it's lovely. I had a guest on who was really passionate about AI, so I gave him a C3PO background, and that's the standard. And someone who was really passionate about food waste, so I gave the background of carrots. And as a marketeer, Lauren, I'm sure you know those little things like colors and images and feel good elements, they can completely change someone's experience. So
they really do. And it also, will warm them up to the experience too. They come in and they feel like, oh, this is different. And, I think that's really important when you're trying to have conversations. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let's dig into the data, because as a marketer, I felt this pain myself, right? Where it's, you have a webinar, you're like, okay, I have basic attendee data, but what am I supposed to do with this really? And so would love to kind of hear, now that you have deeper insights on the engagement, what are you doing with it?
Well, the insights on the engagement, for me, they remove the guesswork when it comes to what people are enjoying and what's actually landing with the audience.
Right.
So I've had where a host who's been on with me has made a questionable joke on the stage, and I'm not sure whether or not the audience will enjoy it, but I don't need to guess, because I can see, like 60 people did a laughing emoji. So I guess they liked it. So we know we can set that tone in future.
Yeah, that's true. It does help influence, the next set of content that you create for these events, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know what your audience respond to. If they really engaged with one particular part but not another, okay, let's move that part a bit earlier in the running order. And it's just great how you can see that information as well. It's presented in graphs, it's presented in breakdowns, person by person, so you can dig into it basically. And
one of the things that I know we are planning to build out more is kind of insight stuff over time, but have you yet used those kind of individual engagement scores to take any action?
I used them to shame our CEO Sharad, because I found that he reacted 387 times in our last webinar. So
that seems like a lot.
Yeah, he was just sat there spamming those emoji buttons. I've used them to see what people like this tone. Do people like it when we're a bit friendly formal as opposed to
right. Being able to dig in at that individual level is so important for marketers, for sales, just like really understand which prospects, which customers are most engaged, and that can really help feed into all of your data that you collect. So that's great. Let's see, we've talked about, you're a power user, obviously. So do you have any advice for newer users or people who are considering using Session on how to get the most out of it?
So as a power user, as you called it, I quite like. I'd just say that personalization, it goes such a long way. Not many companies are super corporate anymore, or not many that I engage with. People aren't like that naturally. I don't think people are individuals, even when they are at work, and they respond to a little bit of personality. So injecting a little bit of color and a nice background and some confetti into your meetings or your events, it doesn't sound like much when you're just talking about it, but now that this audience has experienced what it's like to have those things firsthand as a guest, I see how much you miss it when you're in your next meeting. Someone on here said they use GoToWebinar, so yeah, enjoy that next one, because by comparison, you're going to feel back to the Stone Age.